Welcome, guys. Welcome back to another episode of QuickSnips for NerdPod. I'm Dak, one of your guys' freaking host of the podcast. We've also got Chicken here, one of our community mods. I'm going to let him say hi. Chicken, why don't you say hi?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for rejoining us, listening to us clowns talk about a game we love.
Yeah. A lot's happened since even the last episode. We'll dive into that here soon. But last night, as you guys can hear, I'm very hoarse. Last night we stayed up rather late. I had a really awesome panel of people join us in the Discord, and we all just kind of chatted about what's going on with the game, how we felt before all the drama, how we feel now seeing all of the drama, just to help kind of give a community perspective, and especially a community perspective of people who really fucking love playing Destiny 2. Yeah, it was really good. But before we dive too deep into this, let's roll that intro. All right, guys. So I think what we didn't do last time is we didn't really lay out the lay of the land, as it were, for what we were experiencing pre all of this drama that came up as, Destiny 2 players, as people who really loved Bungie. And I think that a lot of the comments that Matt and I made were very emotionally charged, just because, of course, we really fucking love this game, and it was a highly shocking moment. It was a highly emotional moment. So I think what we wanted to do in this Quick Snips is we really wanted to dive down into the details. Now that we've kind of talked about how we felt, we want to talk more about the details of things and more of the facts of what's going on. And of course, we do want to still kind of give a little bit more of a refined thought on our feelings about everything that's happening. So I'm going to pass it off to Matt. Matt, why don't you tell us what's been going on pre-freaking August 30th?
As you mentioned, we're lovers of the game Destiny, Destiny 2 right now, but the Destiny universe, lovers of Bungie, the studio. But yeah, Destiny as a franchise is entering its 10th year of existence, which, Bungie, when Destiny first came out, Bungie had said that they wanted it to be a 10-year franchise. So we're there. We're at the, we are kind of hit our quote unquote infinity war, and we're heading toward our end game, if you want to equate it to sort of the Marvel universe. The game when it first came out was pretty revolutionary, instituted a lot of pretty unique ideas, had some really incredible gunplay and gameplay and story. The story wasn't always told the smoothest. There's been a lot of ups and downs throughout the life cycle of the game. Some really bad metas and some really incredible expansions. So it's been a wild ride. It hasn't all been smooth sailing. There've been some really dark times in the game's history, but I think kind of the overarching theme is that how good the game was, how much fun it was to play. And that there was so much potential for it to be, a massive looter shooter and a live service game. And then as part of that, they're going through their life cycle. Bungie kind of started after they shed the Halo team. They were an independent studio, and they went through all of D1, Destiny 1, as an independent studio, and then launching in D2, they had partnered with Activision, who's a massive studio, massive publisher, and that brought with it a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, right? They had less control. Some decisions that went into the game probably weren't as effective or what they wanted it to be, but at the same time, they got a lot of access to capital and to direction from a mature franchise, or mature company, I should say, in the gaming industry. After some time, I think Bungie and the community had sort of soured on that relationship. The game was in a really bad spot. The first couple of expansions that came out weren't good. And so they went independent again. And then that lasted for a long time. And then Sony came in last year, and they announced early in 22, I think it closed in like July, that Sony was going to purchase Bungie for $3.6 billion, billion with a B. So obviously that's that kind of speaks to what Bungie is as a studio, that they would have that value attributed to them. And, it's for good reason. This game was incredible. It's a live service game unlike any other. I mean, it's kind of become a meme in the industry. What's going to be the next Destiny killer? all these other games that come out, and none of them work, right? It's, they've all come and gone. Think about like an Anthem or, was it Outlast or Outriders was, and that wasn't so much of a live service. But, the Division, a lot of these, a few of these games still are up and running, but, don't have nearly the notoriety and popularity that Destiny had up until this week. Um, but yeah, so anyway, that's kind of been like the ownership life cycle. Just in terms of where we currently sit, I'd say in the last 3 to 9 months. Unfortunately, the game I think has objectively gotten pretty stagnant. They introduced the seasonal model of content a couple years ago, and it's been the exact same formula that entire time for that entire 3 year period, right? It's I hate to use the term drip feed because I understand the reason why content can't just be all released at the beginning of the season because you play it all in a day and a half and then never pick it up again. But it's wait for the reset each week, go get the MacGuffin, maybe some dialogue, big question marks, you have to come back next week. And then there's just, you got to play kind of the core playlist things. And that was great. But you could only kind of keep going back to that well so many times. Bungie's acknowledged that. And this actually upcoming next season is going to be the final quote unquote season or, using that model. But on top of that, the core playlist, the Strikes, the Crucible, which is PvP, and Gambit, which is sort of a PvE, PvP mix, really has gotten next to no attention for, frankly, years. I mean, we get maybe 1 or 2 new strikes a year. The PvP you talk about the game getting memed on. I mean, Crucible has gotten no new maps or no one new map a year for the last 2 years, and all these existing maps get vaulted, and one of the new ones that we got is just a terrible long range map that doesn't play well. And then on top of all this, Gambit, which is kind of the third core pillar, has gotten absolutely zero attention for probably 4 years, other than the year it came out. So there's been problems with the game and the gameplay loop and the gameplay model. And the player base has voiced their frustration. I think some of it was a little undue, if I'm being, that's my personal opinion, but a lot of it was deserved. And then on top of that, what we're seeing is a significant increase in microtransactions and the over monetization of the game, which has further angered players. It feels like, I mentioned how little input there's been into these core playlist items, but every season we get a ton of new items. Like, they're all, for the most part, cosmetic, but that's what gets all the attention, is the things that are going to make them money. Now that has to be there for them to make money, but seems like there's no balance. It feels so heavily oriented towards just cash grab.
And it's not just cosmetics either. It's not just it's like expansions. It's season passes on top of the expansions. It's dungeon passes on top of the season expansions, and it's all of this additional transactions that they're just getting from us via content that would normally just be released as a DLC that we would pay for, $100, whatever it may be. But those microtransactions are pervasive in the sense that it is everywhere in the game now, where it used to just be the Eververse store.
I mean, a case in point is, they led to, you need new players to keep, reinvigorating your player base, right? And so they have this, we've talked about it, a free to try model. It's not free to play, it's free to try, which is fine. But I think I sent you that screenshot earlier this week. It's $648 to buy all the expansions to get current, and it's just patently absurd. Content like Shadowkeep that's 3.5 years old at this point, like, make it free, make it $3. Like, it's, you can still get a little bit of money on it, but to have the price tag be what it is for such old content that's not even completely playable anymore.
Yeah.
It's hard to justify it. If they kept everything else up in terms of keeping the game up to date, introducing new maps, and introducing new gameplay modes, or innovating the game some way or another, I think you could get away with saying, okay, well, they've done a lot of work for us. But the problem is, it just feels very stagnant. And I was going to say they haven't done anything, because I'm not a developer. They do a ton behind the scenes, but after 10 years, it's just, there's only so many times you can keep playing the same kind of similar game over and over and over again. So, with all this kind of coming to a head. The most recent major annual expansion was very, very poorly received. It was not implemented well. We got a new subclass, which is kind of a reinvention of the way the game's played, right? Is adding a new subclass for all the characters. Unfortunately, the entire expansion was just that it's called Strand, so it's Strand the tutorial. That's what I felt like the expansion was. The story was wildly underwhelming, and it's too bad because it is a great story. They just did a terrible job executing, explaining it. And there's been so many little nuances to that as well, but trying to keep this high level. It's just the expansion was not well presented, and there's been they had their highest concurrent player base when the expansion launched in the game's history, at least on Steam, and you're seeing now that's just no longer the case. There's massive exodus out of the game. And people are really worried too, because now with the announcement of their second IP marathon, or not second, but an alternative IP marathon, a lot of the team members that used to work on Destiny are now working on Marathon. And so that further gets away from, it feels like they're not dedicating resources. They're using the piggy bank that Destiny is to pay for their new toy in Marathon. So again, it just keeps feeding this kind of negative cycle. In August they had the big reveal for the next big in the last expansion, Final Shape, and I think they did a good job in the last QuickSnips. I said the game was kind of riding a high. I was probably overstated that a little bit. It was really more that the game was at such a bad place, and the community sentiment was at such a bad place that it felt relatively like a high, but it still had a ways to go. The current season that we're in, it's been pretty good. The story's been phenomenal. I'd say the gameplay loop's been good, not great, but good, right? Not bad. I think they got excited. We got to see some news about the next expansion. We got to see the news about their new game, and they've been really communicative with the community. And it felt like things were going in the right direction. It's still a little tentative, but then this week hits, and I'm going to pass it back to you so you can talk about all the craziness that we just went through.
Yeah. And to add a little bit before we get to the 30th, to add a little bit to what they've done before that as well, they really went hard on trying to say, we're listening to the community. We're here. We're going to play the game with you. We're going to be a part of this with you. And they really started to... It really felt like they did start to engage with the community again, which was one of our biggest complaints, is that it felt like our voice no longer mattered. That was kind of shared across most everybody in the Destiny space. We all kind of felt like, well, what we want is not what we're getting, but we're, still kind of going with it because we've been in this for 10 years now. But moving on to what did occur on the 30th was, out of nowhere, Bungie just went in and just laid off a pretty sizable chunk of their workforce, 8% of their workforce, which is, sizable for layoffs. And it really did feel like it was out of nowhere. This was hot on the heels of, things that were kind of coming out. They got, as part of that acquisition with Sony, they got was it 2.1 or $1.2 billion? 1.2. So they got $1.2 billion to help prevent layoffs, to help keep the current workforce, to finish out the game, and then of course try and move on to whatever they were moving on to next. But that didn't really happen. We're still not totally certain of where the numbers are as to how many people fully got laid off. Again, we know that it was 8%. That's the number that was confirmed, but we don't know what 8% actually totally looks like, because they did just come on and hire a shitload of employees. I think they have 1,200 employees, but I think that number has fluctuated up and down even then. What was crazy is that when all of this news broke on Monday, it was all just kind of rumors and conjecture, and we didn't really know, and we didn't really know who to trust or who to look at or what to listen to or who to pay attention to. And, it was kind of weird because it initially started as just, we think that, or the reports were showing that Final Shape was going to get delayed, that they were just going to push the Final Shape until June. Marathon, the game, was going to get pushed until I think 2025, right, Chicken? Was it 2025? Okay, yes. Yeah. So that was kind of the rumors. That's happened all the time, guys. Like every expansion, I think, since Forsaken has been pushed in some capacity. As an avid game player, and especially as somebody who, we've been playing this game for 10 years, but I've been playing this game daily up until this past year. I've been playing that game daily for 7 years. So, we kind of already were expecting delays. We were kind of hoping for delays because usually when they delay the product, it does mean a little bit of a better product outside of Lightfall. Um, it's just different this time. And on top of them telling us that they were potentially, or I'm sorry, on top of us finding out rumors that they were potentially going to push the game, then we really started to hear that they were actually doing those layoffs. So it was kind of like this weird contention where it started off as just, oh, they're going to push the game, to then, okay, we're also laying people off. And of course, the emotions got really high. People were blaming, Sony. People were blaming Bungie. People are blaming specifically Pete Parsons. People are blaming, the devs, whatever the case may be. And we kind of got through 10:30. We're still reeling. We got videos out from Asdacross. We got videos out from Fallout Plays. All these like industry. I wouldn't say industry leaders. Sorry. Well, no, they're industry leaders. I would say Destiny 2 like beacons of hope, as it were, people that we can go to that always have like the inside scoop that seems like legitimate and not emotional based. And there was a lot coming out. Paul Tassi had talked to a lot of the devs that had left, that had left. We were hearing things from Bloomberg. Former devs like DMG were coming out and finally sharing their sentiments with everything that's going on, and everything was just really emotional. And we really didn't know on that night like the full extent of everyone that got laid off and the full extent of what their layoffs were potentially going to be. Then we move on to Halloween and we find out that they laid off one of their longest standing people, and right alongside Martin O'Donnell. Michael Salvatore was one of the strongest composers when it came to the Halo franchise. Then he stayed on, and he's given us some of the most incredible music that we've had, even throughout Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. Then it even went farther than that. We found out that the guy that wrote Deep Stone Lullaby, which is probably Destiny's greatest music piece, if not one of the greatest gaming music pieces to ever exist. And specifically, that song was so well received by the community and so well received outside of the Destiny 2 community. So it was all just very shocking that we got people that made the game feel so much different and so much better. And like we kind of said in the panel, me as a big Star Wars fan, one of the things that I loved about Star Wars was that although the dialogue wasn't great, or the story may not have been great, or even the action may not have been great, the music was always really great. And it was the exact same thing in Destiny. Even if we had those lulls of really shitty times or whatever the case may be, even if you're, balls deep into like a fucking raid and everyone's dying and you're all pissed off at each other, like the music like makes the moment where when you do finish something, it's incredible. And as somebody who stepped away from Destiny and played other games, like it's hard to find that anywhere other than a few handful of games. And when we have composers like that, like we get very protective of our composers and are protective of, the music that they create. Mind you, all of this music is also completely DCMA, free. You can use it; it's free to use as long as you just credit Destiny 2. All of that went away from us. They got rid of QA testers. They got rid of dev team members. I believe on the more on the marathon side, and then of course more on the production side. I would say, as far as visuals, things like that. Including some of the people that have been there since the Halo days. Specifically, the artist that designed the Halo logo was also laid off that day. So you've got people that were part of the core of Bungie's DNA were also included in these layoffs. And when we found that out, of course, we just completely lost our shit, because these are people that have been, like I said, a core of Bungie since before many of us even were playing Bungie games. The delays were confirmed then. Again, in conjunction with the news, it felt really shitty because they said we're going to delay the game to make the game the best it can be. And then they also get rid of a lot of, in my opinion, core positions, getting rid of people on the comms team, the PR team, all of these teams that can right the ship and help make the game correct by listening to players. They get rid of all of them. They get rid of the QA testers, the people that actually make sure the shit's right before it comes out to us. And I think that once they start to show who's responsible for the firings, it's really frustrating because all these devs started coming out and saying, "Listen, like, one, I lost my dream job. Two, I don't know what's going to happen, we have to acknowledge it's really hard to get hired in the game development industry. It's not something you can just jump over to a different studio and start their game, right? Like it's highly specialized, and at that style or at that point, you also are very specific to a style. You're very specific to a flow. Like it's very hard just to jump from one studio to the other. So then on top of that, we start hearing even from former employees who maybe didn't really say much in public that they also were experiencing the same thing. And everyone was pointing the finger at management, saying that this is stuff that we think was avoidable. This is stuff that we have been bitching about on your guys' behalf as the players' behalf, and nobody's listening. Somebody like even DMG, we all thought that DMG really just left because of the harassment he was getting from the Destiny 2 community. At least that's the way the narrative was definitely pushed towards us, as the Destiny 2 community. And then we find out, based on his tweets, that's absolutely not the case. He also left because it was mismanaged. So, it was not fantastic. On top of that, we also found out that Marathon had a game test, or I would say gameplay test, and they brought in a bunch of Tarkov streamers, which Tarkov is a very specific extraction looter shooter. Even in the extraction looter shooter, gameplay, that's even its own tier of games. It's kind of like, I don't know. To me, it would be like if they developed a new first person shooter and they're like, yeah, we're going to bring CS:GO people in. Like it's very a specialized kind of thing already. But they brought this table of people in, or this round table of people in, and it didn't go well. People did not like Marathon in its current state. People didn't like the way it was, and they said, if this game were to be released tomorrow, would you guys buy it? And nobody raised their hand. Of course, now that the story's developed more, we found out that they made it very, very clear to everybody that was there. This is pre-alpha. We're just wanting to see what you guys think of the game now. They told everybody on that panel the game's at least a year away from being released. So again, it was one of those things where we got really emotional about it at the time, but then, the more news came out and, we kind of calmed down a little bit because we got a little bit better of a kind of a perspective from confirmed sources per se. So all of that occurred, Matt and I, of course, gave you guys our kind of quick emotional responses. And of course, we gave that on the 30th, it came out on the 31st, but we gave that on the 30th. So we missed out on a lot of stuff as well. What we did last night, which was originally supposed to be this recording, was kind of a round table amongst some of my, really good friends from the Destiny community. And we had a lot of different people there. We did have, of course, our gaming community. We've had my former clan members, my former clan members, and I mean, we had streamers. Somebody that I started watching, stream Destiny 2. I think back whenever it first launched. We had somebody that I met through another streamer years and years and years ago. We had a really large group of people there, and it gave us a really long and awesome perspective. I will say that content was very long, so we're going to either dice it up and put it out in pieces, or we're going to release it out as a chunk. I would highly encourage you guys to listen to it, but again, it's very long, so I totally get it if you guys can't power through 3.5 hours of that. But the thing that was really cool, of course, with that panel last night was we got a lot of differing opinions, and something that the Destiny community is known for is being a very loving and accepting community, but also for being a very toxic community. And I know that's a very big contradiction, but what I mean when I say that is, for example, there are very, 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 very few games who somebody as a new player can reach out to a group of people and say, I'm new to this. Can you guys help me out? A lot of different types of games would just say no because they gatekeep it because they don't want to have to carry somebody through it. But the Destiny 2 community is all more about sharing, or not sharing, but about, it is about caring for, your fellow Guardians. And of course, also it's for helping out your fellow Guardians as well. It's kind of just in the core of the game. And, it got really bad in Destiny 1 with you must have to join the LFG groups, but it really, really got corrected in Destiny 2. And it was nice because, that same mentality that we had behind that was what we brought to the panel, where we can disagree, we can get heated, we can even get a little bit of emotional, but at the same time, we're going to remain civil. And even if all of that occurs, it all occurs just because this is a game that we love so much. I would say there was some specific points that kept getting brought up amongst all of us. And there was a group of, how many was it? Was it 8 of us? I think it was 8 of us, right? 8 or 9 of us? 9 of us, I think, yeah. So there was a group of 9 of us, but there was about, I think, 2 main things if I'm not mistaken. Two main things that were consistent between all of us. One, all of us are scared for the future of the game, especially given the news of massive financial shortfalls, which we touched on in the first episode, but I don't think we talked about it this episode. They didn't hit their margin, so they didn't hit their financial margins by 45% for this quarter, which is pretty fucking brutal. A bad quarter is usually like 8, 10, 20%. It's like you guys have to start making changes. 45%, that's, the house of cards falling down. That's the house is kind of on fire. We're all starting to panic. So everybody in that panel was nervous about the future of the game, nervous about the future of the studio as well. Second, it doesn't feel like the community was part of the game, and it doesn't feel like the community's voice was being heard to the decisions that were being made at the studio for the game. And we clearly found out through last week that the devs did know about it, and the devs have been fighting for us as a voice. The people that actually work on the game, the brass at the top, the management, they were the ones who didn't like it. And I think all of us agreed as well. I would say a third point was we don't want to see a shakeup at the dev level. We don't want to see any more layoffs at the dev level. But I think all of us do kind of want to see a shakeup in the management sector, because we really do feel like they've lost touch with both their own devs, their own team, and us as a player base. Man, there's so much shit going on in the world right now, and it's rough, it's hard, and something we all talked about last night is that for a long number of years, this game has felt like an escape. And, especially with everything that happened to me last year, with losing my father, with me trying to move back here to the Midwest, the game has always been there for us. The game has always been the thing that is consistent, constant. It's our secure thing that we know is always going to be there. And, that's why we got so emotional like we did on the 30th. And that's why we're, even getting emotional tonight. Like this game does mean a lot to us because this has been our community. And we talked about it last night, and we talked about it a little bit on the first QuickSnips. But I mean, Matt and I have known each other for 6 going on 7 years. And that's crazy to think that, he and I have known each other for that long through a video game. And, I consider him one of my closest friends in life. And it's all through this game. And it's all because of our love for this game. And that would not be possible without Bungie's game. And that's why we care. That's why all of this is happening, and that's why we're so emotional, and that's why we talk about it for 4 hours. Like Matt said, though, even if you don't like Destiny stuff, or even if you just want to know what's going on, like that's a good way to get that perspective. And it, just like any episode that we do with NerdPod, we want to feel like it's just a group of guys hanging out in a party chat. And that's exactly what it was last night. We had amazing guys and gals in there last night that I've hung out with and played the game nice, being able to just talk about the game that we were so passionate about. To try and keep it quick-ish, snips-ish, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. We'll see you guys on Monday morning for episode 16 of NerdPod.